creating an atmosphere. I wanted Mats and his friends to create the atmosphere. And then I sort of made a rule for myself saying, but they can hear music that exists in this universe, and we can play it a couple of times even as a score. But and that way the songs became very important. Also, this is a portrait of our country. It's in many ways it's a celebration of our country and the beautiful songs of our country. Also, I think music is so related to the ecstasy of getting drunk. And when it comes to the end scene, that particular song has become inseparable from the movie, I think. We chased some very expensive rights all over the world for a long time. And my wife just kept saying, there's a Danish band, they have the song you need. And she just kept playing it for me. And finally I gave into it. And now I'm deeply in love with that song.
Even the song, what is that? I can't remember the name of that great soul music song in the Sazerac scene, but that's just like evokes such a mood.
It's called Sissy Strut.
Yes. I knew it was Sissy something, but I couldn't remember the second word.
The meters.
Yes.
That took a long time to find because it had to be cool. It could not be too hectic, vibrant, young, because that would make them look old. Mm-hmm. And yet still it had to be a celebratory, upbeat moment. You know, there was a lot of, things going on. I think we listened to 1,000 songs before this sort of came into place. And then a lot of musicians also did not want to appear in a film about drinking. So, that was a bit of a struggle.
So this is a question. So this is a question for Thomas and then one for Mads. Were there any scenes that you struggled to write, Thomas? And then for Mads, were there any scenes that you struggled in performing or that you had a hard time with in performing?
Well, I struggled a little bit with the long scene in the restaurant in the beginning where Mads ends in tears. Because I wanted it to be long and I wanted it to sort of be a film in the film. And because our main character was already crying in the 19th minute of the movie, which is unusual. So it really had to build up in the right way. And that little symphony in itself was something that demanded a lot of work in the writing and in the editing. Maybe the one that took most work.
And then Mads, did you have a scene that was challenging to film or perform?
I have to watch what I'm saying now because it might look challenging. I think that, like the other film I did with Thomas called The Hunt, it might look difficult, but when it's that well written, you kind of lean into it and it makes it much easier. The most difficult scenes that for an actor are the scenes that's not working. The scenes that just you can't figure out how to solve this because it's not written the way it's supposed to. And we didn't have any of those scenes. They're all well written. We were struggling as an entire cast, I guess, with some scenes, especially the funeral scene, the church scene. But that was for other reasons than material. That was for private reasons.
I love that the funeral scene reminds me of the amazing child Specs. I loved him so much. What a great addition.
And he
broke my heart.
This is, believe it or not, he was a little annoyed with being cast for that specific part because he was like the kid who wasn't that good at soccer. He was the best of the kids playing soccer. He was a tiny little Messi. He was a genius with a ball. So we held him back a little, but in the little breaks he had, he showed us how good he was. Yeah, he was a. He's like, yeah.
He's like, I got to prove that I'm actually good at soccer. Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions. For Thomas, can you please talk a little bit about the choices you made with the camera movement changes as the characters spiral deeper into drinking throughout the film?
Right. Sturla, I think you would call it in America. Sturla is the name of the DOP, and I had meetings about this, and we agreed to portray reality in its edgy, not musical, not smooth kind of way, with rigid movements, loud sounds that suddenly appears and interrupt what you're about to say, the awkwardness of reality. And then when they started drinking, we wanted it to smoothen up and become a pleasure, like a 747 taking off into the sunset. So that we sort of enjoyed the alcohol and felt the alcohol in their blood, in their veins. And then, of course, when it becomes trashy and horrible later, it becomes muddy again in the camera. But he's the kind of cameraman who's super sensitive to what's happening. So the scenes and the actors and the atmosphere of the scene pretty much dictated what the camera did.
And were you primarily working handheld, Steadicam?
Solely handheld.
Okay.
Everything in this movie is handheld. Because he's fantastic at doing that, and because I wanted that truthfulness that comes with the handheld camera.
And he's the operator as well, the camera operator?
Right.
Okay.
Which is normal in our humble shire.
You never know if the DP is standing to the side, giving directions, or, I guess they all have different styles.
Katie, our film crews are just smaller. So we have to deal with more things.
Well, there was a question actually relating to that for Mods, which is that just talking about the difference between making films in Denmark and making, US blockbusters, is there a preference for one or the other, or, how do you feel about the two different styles of production?
Well, I feel good about both of them. I grew up with what we're doing here in Another Round. This is our approach to making films. So of course I feel at home in a different way than I do when I go to a big set and they have a spider camera and the shot is, controlled by a computer. But that's also interesting to find the truth in that moment. There is something with the handheld. Of course, it's as if it's our shadow. It's always there. It's there. It will capture what needs to be captured. It's a different way of working together when you're having cranes and spider cameras, and we always try to make it a small set, a small situation, a truthful little situation, and trying to forget the surroundings. That is obviously much easier when it's going on a level that we do in Denmark, but it's part of our job. I don't want to choose between the two. I love both.
Well, it's almost like you have to have the balance. Like you go try something different, and then you go home and ground yourself with your longtime collaborators and friends.
Exactly. Both things are inspiring to the other. So they go hand in hand to me.
Right. For Thomas, the question is, why did you use that particular quote from Kirkegaard at the beginning of the film?
The quote in the beginning is a quote about youth and about getting older. There's an endless amount of ways to analyze that quote, which I think is part of the beauty of it. But it does remind me of the weightlessness of being young, what these four characters are yearning for, and what I occasionally is yearning for, and am yearning for. I remember being 16 and a little bit drunk, 4 o'clock in the morning, in my flowered garden, slightly in love, and feeling that I was flying, feeling the weightlessness. And I think the word from Kirkegaard reflects on that in the most precise and beautiful way. But he's quoted a couple of times throughout the movie. And he's probably the man ever who's been reflecting on lack of control in the most elaborate way. What, the gifts you can get, the gifts that you can get from letting go of control.
That's a wonderful answer to that question. Let's look at more audience questions. Are you planning to collaborate together again anytime soon?
Yes.
two of you. Anything in the works or nothing that you can talk about yet?
No, I don't know what he's come up with, but my plan is one day just have to pick up the phone and I'm ready.
Ah, that's beautiful. You know, there's no such thing I would rather do than to work with Mads. And it's been such a joyride both times. And I think we've come very far both times. And the abilities and the strength Mads has as a friend and as an actor would make me want to go back to that. But it requires the perfect thing. I would never do a half step towards him. It would have to be a full-on approach.
You have to have the fully formed idea and then, you know, sort of present him with that.
It has to be the right thing.
Yeah, the right thing.
Yeah. He can play everything, but you know what I mean. It has to be worth it.
Just my 2 cents. I think a musical with dancing should be the next project.
Well,
You ready for that, Matt?
well, now I'm getting reluctant again. Let me think about it.
You know, totally grounded, authentic, handheld. We just want to see more dancing.
You have to understand, nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to pay to listen to me sing. For good reason.
Okay. We'll work around that. We'll work around that. There's ways of getting around that.
I have to say about the dancing scene in this film, maybe people love that scene so much because it's earned. You know, they've been through 20 minutes of severe darkness right before, and there's an element of disappointment about this concept that didn't work, ended up not working for them. And then finally, there's, you know, if he'd been dancing throughout the movie, it would have been a bit.
It's true. It's very surprising in many ways, but also I totally agree with you that like any sort of, you know, cinematic catharsis, whether it's like violence or emotion or, you know, right, euphoric dancing, like it does need to be earned and like have the audience invested in that happening. So you're totally right that it's like the euphoria that we kind of need, that release. It's like you create that for the audience.
Non-singing musical.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. You know, a dance film or something.
Sounds good. Just send me the script. I'll look at it.
So another question, have you noticed the drinking culture of various countries having an effect on how the film was received there? Or was it more surprising to learn how universal drinking culture can be? And this, I know you said that like this film has been a huge success in Denmark, and I'm just curious, like, has it caused any conversations or about drinking, or it seems like it inspires honesty about drinking in a way.
It seems like so far every country it has met, people have a very strong relation to and history with alcohol. But also, it seems that people understand that the movie is about more than alcohol, and that it's about universal themes such as being in your midlife, being inspired and uninspired, and so forth. It surprised me a little bit that in a world of confinement, death, and, you know, the world of Corona, basically, bankruptcies and stuff, that the film landed as such a, you know, revelation for people. I was afraid it would land slightly irrelevant. And it seems that the opposite has happened. They need to see people embrace and dance and drink and sweat all in the same room. It's apparently something people are missing.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, everyone is craving that connection, being in a bar, having drinks with friends. My friend Bill Ross, who's a documentary filmmaker who made a film about a bar, he was saying, oh my God, I can't wait to be drinking Sazeracs and listening to Sissy Strut with my friends again. And I think that we're all kind of relating to that sense of connection that you can find having drinks with friends or you know, dancing with a bunch of high school teenagers on a pier, you know, like, or, you know, at a bar, whatever it is. And it's like, that we're getting a little piece of that in this film. But yes, it is about so much more than just alcohol. It becomes this really philosophical journey into like unlocking the part of yourself that can feel uncontrollable or can be receptive and open to joy and to everything that life has to offer, the highs and the lows.
But
Well, I think that's
the reason. I think I've often said that Thomas has made his most Italian film, and what I mean with that is not that it's an Italian topic. I mean that it doesn't matter how dark or sad or brutal an Italian film is, you always leave the movie theater with a sense of loving life. I think that's what this film does. This film is a life-embracing film. And as Thomas said, young people, old people, middle-aged people leave the theater with a feeling of wanting to embrace life.
Wanting to run around a lake with a box of beer and vomit.
That is like universal across cultures. Like I know guys who would do running and chugging beer races, and I'm like, this really must be like some ancient primal ritual.
Well,
it's just cheaper. You get your pulse up, you get drunk much faster. It's just cheaper.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have left, but one of the sort of kickstarts for this movie was that I had a visitor from Hollywood. She was writing a film with me. It took off with, it didn't happen, but she stayed with me for a week. She was very, very intelligent, and she's an American. And she meets my daughter, and she says, "So what are you going to do today, Nana?" And Nana says, "Oh, I'm going to run the lake run." And this woman says, "So what's that?" "I have to run around a lake and empty a box of beer." And this woman looks at me like, when is the father going to interfere? When is he going to stop this? And I don't, because I'm a Scandinavian and I'm used to drunk kids in the street. And she goes, "But don't you get sick, Nana?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, but if we vomit synchronized, time will be deducted, so that's okay." And this woman gets a little bit more disturbed. And then she says, "What about the police?" And Nana says, "Oh, but the teachers are there." And when I saw her American head fall apart in that moment, I thought, there's something about Danish drinking culture that I need to explore. But apparently, this is happening all over the world.
Well, it is interesting because, you're sort of confronted by someone else saying, "This is strange." And you're like, "No, it's not. This is what I grew up with." And, I grew up in a culture where the drinking age was 18 and I was going to bars and, I wasn't doing a lake run because we didn't have a lake, but, it is interesting to kind of see those, little points of friction. But the track team at my college did a what they called a beer mile. So that was similar. I don't know if the rules are exactly the same, but it was a similar setup.
Right. Yeah, well, drinking is universal and has been here forever.
Yes. Well, I think that is all the time we have for now, but thank you so much for joining the American Cinematheque and for me and me for, having, talking to me about this film. It's such a great film. I loved it. I can't wait to see what you guys do next. And this was a great discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Katie, Mouse, Thomas, thank you again. Thank you. It was a wonderful conversation. We're so happy to have all three of you. To our audience, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you watch another round if you haven't seen it yet. It's widely available on VOD. And please join us for our conversations next weekend for Night of the Kings and Promising Young Woman. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.